Story 1. When someone knows you are going through a hard time yet they don't reach out to you at all, it is a deal breaker for me in any friendship or relationship. I want to feel cared for. Story 2. Lack of communication and dishonesty are challenging for me. If you can't discuss issues or go silent when things get tough, it creates difficulty in our interactions. I don't need constant texting, just honest conversations. Additionally, if someone is consistently negative, it quickly drains my energy. I understand we all have bad days, but if the atmosphere is always heavy, I start feeling like I'm walking on eggshells. Story 3. Breaking agreed-upon terms can impact relationships in various ways. I've learned that people's relationships can take many forms and tolerate behaviors that I personally would not accept. If you both agree that every time you have a fight, you can engage with someone else while upset, that's your choice. If using emasculating language in public is acceptable to both of you, that is your decision. If one partner prefers to give orders while the other complies, and it works for both, then that is your dynamic. Story 4. Since I haven't seen it yet, there is a lack of reciprocity. Many individuals only take and never give back or do anything in return. While hanging out and intimacy can be enjoyable, for a relationship to work, it needs to be more than just someone who demands my money, time, emotional investment, and physical effort, offering only a few laughs and intimacy in return. If that's all it is, then we will remain in the casual zone. Story 5. Cleanliness and intelligence. If you don't have either or are going to be entirely dependent on me for everything, then no. Find someone else. Story 6. Cheating, any form of abuse, poor hygiene, drug use, having or wanting children, disrespect toward waitstaff, and lying are all unacceptable behaviors. Story 7. Cheating, lying, disrespect, and lack of commitment can undermine a relationship. Relationships require effort, and it is important to recognize that things may not always be perfectly balanced. However, the commitment to a partner includes being willing to support one another when necessary, knowing that your partner would do the same for you. It is about balancing life together and doing things for each other out of love. Story 8. Reflecting on a previous dating experience that somehow led to a third date, I noticed her interest in her phone far outweighed her interest in me. During the first date, I understood the jitters. That's fair enough. By the second date, I noticed it more. She giggled along to group chats and took calls that outstayed their welcome. On the third date, she was completely oblivious to her surroundings, constantly walking into things and people, clearly not engaging with me. About 30 minutes in, I mentioned that I didn't feel a connection between us. I didn't make a scene, and as expected, she seemed unfazed, quickly returning her focus to her phone as she walked off and ran into a lamppost. Also, for anyone hung up on their ex, that's a red flag. You're just the rebound that will never bounce back. Story 9. I have dated 3 people who were skilled at deceiving me about their drug addictions, but eventually, they began to show signs of their struggles, and I caught on. They were also very manipulative, which I believe is often connected to lying to a partner and concealing the truth. Story 10. Any form of polygamy is acceptable to me as long as everyone involved is happy. However, the thought of being in a polyamorous relationship myself makes me extremely uncomfortable and diminishes my attraction to a person more than almost anything else. Story 11. These days, an inability to problem solve, addictions, refusal to work on oneself, and dislike of animals are common issues. Story 12. Children. I don't want them. I won't give birth to them, and I won't raise them. I don't want to adopt or foster either. If my partner wants kids that desperately, then I am not the one for them. I don't want my mind changed. If having children is what you wish for, then that is it for us. Story 13. I had a boyfriend living with me who had been let go from his job and didn't tell me for nearly a month. He still got up every day for work. I came home early one day and caught him at home when he should have been at work. The moment I found out, I made him leave. He still owes me $5,000 for various expenses he should have covered. Story 14. Lack of effort. Poor hygiene. Inability to maintain appropriate boundaries with attractive individuals. Expectation that I would handle all housework and childcare while also working. I refused to be abandoned and left with nothing. unhealthy codependent relationships with family members, anger and substance abuse issues. Story 15. There are many reasons, but one of them is having political views that significantly differ from mine. I am not going to be with someone who supports, for instance, large-scale deportation raids or banning abortion. Consequently, someone who holds those views probably should not want to be with me either. Nowadays, political views are intertwined with moral philosophy, and I will not compromise on that in my romantic life. Story 16. Not being prioritized and sitting on the back burner has been a painful experience. I have been cheated on, lied to, and abused. I have even had relationships where there was none of that. I just wasn't treated as much of a priority as I should have been. I will never again beg someone to communicate with me or for anything else. This also applies to my friendships. I refuse to accept one-sided relationships. Story 17. Notice what your partner says about you when you are not together, such as to friends and colleagues. If they raise their voice or express distorted anger, be cautious of any progression in that behavior. Respect should be absolute. Story 18. With this question, I realized I have quite a few concerns. A person who is violent for laughs or an ego boost, exhibiting violent outbursts of anger such as hitting or throwing objects, is a serious issue. An individual with any form of addiction, whether it be spending drugs, alcohol, gambling, pornography, video games, television series, books, or exercise, is concerning. No addiction is a good addiction. Someone with untreated mental illness poses challenges. Mental illness not only affects the individual but also impacts the people who care about them. Living with someone who has untreated mental illness or who does not take treatment seriously, including self-medicating by either exceeding prescribed doses or abruptly stopping medication, is difficult. It brings constant anxiety, anger, and frustration. I am not equipped to handle it. Story 19. When you discover a couple of months into the relationship that your partner is manipulative, you may feel trapped in their web, singing the Cure's lullaby with a faint voice. Story 20. When one of you has to be the warden, trust is lost. If we need to go through each other's phones to build trust, it's not worth it. The mentality of not being able to be friends with the opposite gender is unhealthy. I have never gone through my girlfriend's phone, and she just plays games on mine. I don't mind if she is friends with guys, and she doesn't care if I am friends with girls. Story 21. Judging me harshly for managing my mental illnesses, smoking, believing false information, and wanting children. Story 22. Aside from the obvious issue of not driving or having a car, I live in a suburban area where it is not practical to date someone without convenient transportation options beyond rideshare services. Story 23. Lying. I'm not talking about trivial lies. I'm referring to serious lies that could jeopardize our relationship. Story 24. Poor or zero communication in conjunction with stagnation. I guess I am probably not one to set true absolutes like this, though. Story 25. I dislike smoking, but I have dated smokers. Recently, I met a guy who smokes and whom I find attractive, but this time I am not considering dating a smoker. I can't help but imagine kissing someone who smokes and the smell of smoke, and I realize that, regardless of how great the person is, my comfort takes precedence. There are plenty of non-smokers available. It's a deal breaker for me. Story 26. Not cleaning up after themselves or poor hygiene is unacceptable. I did not agree to take on a parental role. Please handle it yourself. If you do not, I will not tolerate living in unsanitary conditions with you. Story 27. Smoking. Coming home intoxicated. Not respecting my family or others. Lack of personal goals. Poor hygiene. Rudeness towards waitstaff or public service employees. Note: the text reflects personal opinions and experiences of a 26-year-old male. Story 28. Lack of hygiene, love, respect, and communication skills are often interconnected more than one might realize. While relationships and love ideally go hand in hand, manipulative individuals can rush and overwhelm you intentionally, engineering a relationship before you are naturally ready. They may use you and then discard you, or even worse. It's important to ensure that someone's love is calm and stable, especially amidst the rush of hormones and emotions. Story 29. There is a lot to consider, but the most important factor is not sharing similar views, whether related to politics, religion, future parenting styles, or other aspects. Story 30. Not intelligent, downright hateful, and trying to undermine me. Aside from that, I am okay with pretty much anything. Personally, I am not very romantic. I just need to address the essentials. Bonus points if they are open to exploring new experiences if we ever become intimate. Story 31. Besides cheating, a failure to make an effort in things important to me would be a definite deal breaker. This works both ways. Story 32. Not being flexible and ensuring that we only do what others want is problematic. Flexibility is a two-way street, and if you are not flexible with me, then I do not wish to be with you. Story 33. As someone in recovery with less than a year of sobriety, I understand the challenges. I had an ex who was formally diagnosed with bipolar disorder but did not adhere to her medication. I loved her dearly, but the emotional turmoil was overwhelming for me. For the record, she ended our relationship and I would have stayed for the long term. I find big lies and manipulation troubling. While everyone lies or manipulates occasionally, it is concerning when it becomes ingrained in their personality and is done with malice. Story 34. Being an American conservative, cheating, lying about something for years regardless of what you lied about, treating minorities and low-wage workers poorly, and any form of abuse, as well as listening to influencers in any capacity. Story 35. Cheating and lying are unacceptable. If you are hiding things from me, you are already losing my trust. If you wouldn't do it with me by your side, you are already losing my trust. Story 36. Greed and racism. I dated a Chinese woman for too long. When she entered real estate, greed consumed her life. She will never have children and does not have much family. I cannot understand why she is accumulating such wealth. Then she went on a racist tirade about one of her tenants. That's when I left the relationship. Story 37. A girl was talking to me and wanted me to ask for permission before I described touching her. I went along with it because I had no other options and really liked her from the start. It was exhausting even though she never really said no. It seemed like I understood the context, what she wanted and what not to do. One night we were flirting, and I went along with something she said. She responded with, "You can just ask." I apologized and then asked. I forget exactly what was said, but it ended with, "I wish I could erase myself from your memory." It was one of the most hurtful things anyone has said to me. It was even more hurtful because I wasn't trying to be sexual at the start. I was just trying to say she could sleep on my chest. I don't want someone who is uncomfortable with touch. Story 38. Lack of accountability, lack of respect, lack of understanding, lack of empathy, lack of commitment, lack of loyalty, playing the victim card. The list goes on. Story 39. Drugs and alcohol. The first and hopefully only guy I fell for was high or drunk for years and would be hungover when we spent time together. When we drank, he talked endlessly about his drug experiences. Personally, I have become completely sober and expect any future partner to be sober as well. Story 40. Everyone instantly claims cheating is the worst, but I believe there are worse things. People endure abuse from their partners for years, yet if they cheat on the abuser, they become the one at fault, as if it cancels out everything that happened before. Story 41. I have too many to mention. I need to make a list. However, the most significant traits are abusive, egoistic, manipulative, or hateful behaviors. Story 42. Their sexuality has always been a part of my experience. I have had my fair share of partners who weren't straight, and it never bothered me. However, when I was 19, I suddenly developed an insecurity about it. I know my chances of being cheated on aren't likely, but if my partner cheated with a girl or preferred girls over guys, I would feel less of a man. I've been working on this and feel okay with it most of the time, but the thoughts still creep into my mind, and I feel regretful. I would hate to be homophobic. Story 43. Dishonesty. There is nothing I dislike more than people who do not respect you enough to be honest. I would rather be hurt by a blunt truth than be lied to. Story 44. I don't smoke, do drugs, or drink heavily, and I can't imagine being happy with someone who does. We can be friends, but I'm not looking to wake up to that personality every day. Story 45. Being secretive about themselves or keeping you from getting to know their family is quite common. They may be afraid to tell their family about you or that they are seeing someone. I once dated a Russian who was like that. It did not last. About 3 months in, he broke up with me a week before Christmas. He was such a coward, honestly. I joked with my mom that if I met him, I would hold his hand and it would break. That man was so skinny. He had this strange fixation on eating until full and then sending pictures of his stomach to fat fetishist forums. I mentioned the concept of fetishism to him while we were together, and he reacted poorly. He went on a tirade about how it involved gluttony and was sinful. Story 46. Aside from the obvious issues like abuse and cheating, I would say that a person who is too serious and doesn't know how to relax and have fun is not ideal. Life is stressful enough already. I don't need a partner to add to that stress. Story 47. Smoking, excessive drinking, drug use, cheating, and selfishness, particularly when one consistently prioritizes their own needs over their partner's, are detrimental to relationships. Abusive behavior, whether mental or physical, along with mental health issues such as bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, borderline personality disorder, and autism, can also create significant challenges. Additionally, poor hygiene is a concern. It's frustrating to be downvoted for expressing that consistent self-centeredness is not healthy. In relationships, it's important to find a balance and make sacrifices, as both partners should work together as a team rather than focusing solely on individual desires. Story 48. As a relationship anarchist living in America, my deal breakers are major inconsistency, poor communication, and a lack of respect for my time and well-being. I may experience an abundance of connection, but I do not have an abundance of time or energy. My calendar is my altar. Story 49. Someone who has to schedule everything or is excessively spontaneous. There is a significant amount of middle ground between these two extremes. If you don't find yourself somewhere in that range, it may not be worth considering. Story 50. Calling me stupid multiple times for working out and for some guys looking at me was disrespectful. I told him he disrespected me, and he replied that it was my fault because other men were looking at me, which was why he had to endure it. That day, I was in disbelief and didn't end things, but I am ready to walk away. Someone who loves you, no matter how mad they get, shouldn't disrespect you in any way. It was not my fault that other men were checking me out. I don't have control over what other people do. Sometimes being in love makes you excuse certain behaviors for the person you want to be with or dream of a future with. Don't do it. After 9 months of dealing with emotional drain, I needed to vent. Story 51. Being clingy or needy in a relationship that hasn't existed for long can be overwhelming. Some people may think it's romantic, but I don't want a good morning text or a good night text. I also don't appreciate random texts without a subject of conversation just for the sake of it. Please stop texting me unnecessarily. I dislike receiving messages about trivial matters, and I feel obligated to respond to avoid leaving someone on read, which seems unacceptable for some reason. Please give me space. Focus on your own life. Story 52. I have a saying about this. I like my women like I like my coffee, without anyone else's involvement. Story 53. Besides a lack of respect and loyalty, there is jealousy. I trust my husband to spend time with a female coworker or even talk to an ex from high school on social media. He trusts me to hang out with male friends. I would be upset if he didn't have the same faith in me that I have in him. Another deal breaker would be mistreating my mini zoo of rescued animals. I am glad I found a partner who treats them well and understands how much love I have for my bundles of fur and feathers. Story 54. There are many points to discuss, but my main concern is the attempt to change me solely for your benefit or to mold me into your ideal person, instead of finding someone who truly fits your preferences. Cheating is inevitable if you practice monogamous relationships or closed polyamorous relationships. A polyamorous relationship requires consent and proper communication, Otherwise, it is simply cheating. Additionally, if you do not respect or belittle my hobbies, interests, passions, or talents, that is a major issue. You don't need to lie to someone about their abilities, but there's no reason to be rude about it either. Requiring me to get along with your family members for our relationship to succeed is unacceptable. If you need my relationship with your mother or family members to be positive for us to be together, then I'm not interested. I do not seek approval from in-laws. My upbringing taught me that family acceptance depends on the health of personal relationships and mutual respect. Furthermore, do not feel the need to impress my mother or family members. I believe in the bonds we choose to create. It is far more important to gain the approval of my best friend and my nieces and nephews. Story 55. I'm married, so not having my wife is the first deal breaker. But suppose I woke up and my wife had disintegrated overnight. I wouldn't date anyone I work with, at least not anyone I see every day. I wouldn't date anyone who lives more than 15 minutes from my house, which rules out the vast majority of people as I live quite rurally. I wouldn't date anyone with children. Not that I dislike children. I love kids and have my own. I have just seen that when two parents with children get together, it rarely works out well. I wouldn't date anyone who doesn't like animals. I wouldn't date anyone who supports Donald Trump. She can be a Republican, that's fine, as long as she's not part of the Make America Great Again movement. I wouldn't date someone who is already taken or who wants a polyamorous relationship. I wouldn't date someone over 12 feet tall, as they'd probably ask me to remove all the ceiling fans in the house. Story 56. Being a conservative or Christian is important to me, but my values have changed since I left my parents' house. If someone is polyamorous, I am strictly monogamous. Being polyamorous is not an option for me, at least not for several years. Story 57. Discovering that she was sexually active was a conversation that often arose early on. If it meant the end. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.